there's another one on there now for people to make comments about, and I thought that went through this agency, and when I saw that, I just thought it was strange, so I was checking. It must be something to wetland.
So I have, can't deny it.
When we take the, we didn't do it last time, we have to show you the whole way.
I guess we're set. Good morning, everybody. I think last night was the first night it didn't drop below 32 degrees in my memory of the winter. This is the meeting number 542 of the Lake George Park Commission. It's Tuesday, February 25th, and we're at the Holiday Inn Resort in downtown Lake George. And do we have a quorum?
Yes.
We do. Thank you. Item number 2 will be approval of meeting minutes and fiscal actions report. Approval of the meeting minutes. Motion made, motion seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no nays. Approval of the fiscal actions report for January 2025. Moved. Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no nays. Approved. Item 3, project review actions report. Commissioner Stanek.
Resolution 2025-07. Whereas the Commission has received and reviewed the Project Review Action Report prepared by staff and dated February 19, 2025, and the Project Review Committee recommends acceptance of the Project Review Action Report. Therefore, that the Commission directs that the Project Review Actions Report be incorporated in the minutes of the full Commission meeting. So moved.
Second.
Motion made, motion seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Item number 4, application for a dock variance. Robert Todd, 14 Parkside Drive. And Randy or Joe, that is?
That's going to be me. He's ready. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Robert Todd is here, and you can make your way up to the microphone if you don't mind. He is here requesting a variance for to go beyond the 100-foot mark from the mean high water mark, and also to enter and continue to stay in the 20-foot setback to the property to the south. Their dock is currently 100 feet. It's right on Finkel Brook, and they have issues getting it in and out of the dock area, so they want to extend it out another 40 feet. And we went out there last Thursday and with some board members and took a look at it, and I'll let Mr. Todd say a few words, and then you guys can discuss.
Good morning. So, sorry, swallowed wrong. So I'm Robert Todd, third generation of the house there, 14 Parkside Drive. My grandfather bought the property in 1970, built the house. The dock was originally 40 feet long and able to put a boat there at that point, back in the 70s. As Mr. Rath was saying, we have Finkel Brook there, and over the years, sediment has been coming down from up by the Bolton dump that they've been working on trying to resolve. So over the last 30 to 40 years, the sediment's coming down. It's getting shallower and shallower. The dock's currently 100 feet, and just over the years, over the years from the sand sediment coming down, it's very shallow to the point of trying to get a boat in or out. It's unsafe passage where we had to physically get out and walk the boat and lift up the stern so it doesn't drag on the bottom to get in and out, because we can't even run it in that shallow water. So trying to get to be to the point that we're at the end of that delta, closer to some deeper water, so it's not as far having to push and walk that boat out, because like I said, it becomes just an unsafe passage. So yeah, like I said, we're trying to just get the safety of getting the boat and active so the dock is usable. Because 100 feet, I would think that we'd be able to get it safely in and out, but as the delta is there, it makes things very challenging. So I was requesting to go a little bit farther so we can have safe passage in and out. So
Very good. Thank you.
no problem. If there's any questions, let me know.
Anybody else here to speak for or against? Support of, thereof? You can relax and sit down for a second. Commissioners, we had a visit, I assume?
Yeah, we went out there, several of us. and it seems a very reasonable request. The dock to the north, which is closer to Finkelbrook, is considerably longer. So, I don't know, Kathy, you were there?
I think it's appropriate, especially based on what's happening in the water itself. Then it's within reason of all of the surrounding docks, as Joe has noted.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely conforming. Very good.
Sounds like we need a resolution.
Resolution 2025-08, approved dock variance application. Application number is DWM 2540-12. Applicant is Robert Todd. Whereas the applicant has applied to modify an existing dock by extending it 140 feet from the mean high water mark and adding 2 WPC lifts in accordance with plans attached. The Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record. The commission has made a determination pursuant to 6 NYCRR 645-3.6 and the State Environmental Quality Review Act of 6 NYCRR 617.5 that the project is a type 2 action and does not require further potential impacts pursuant to this act. And whereas the commission and the action is considered a minor project pursuant to 6 NYCRR 645-5.3, and public notice has been published and distributed consistent with the regulations. And whereas the applicant has requested a variance from 646-1.1C23, no dock shall extend more than 100 feet from the mean high water mark, and -646-1.1C11, no dock shall be constructed in the 20-foot setback, sideline setback. Whereas the applicant has demonstrated the strict performance with the regulations will cause unnecessary hardship due to unique and peculiar circumstances which impose substantial financial, technical, and safety burdens. And whereas the commission finds there is no reasonable possibility that the applicant's property, or if no property is involved, the continuation of the applicant's business enterprise use of activity will bring a reasonable return following conformance with the regulations. And whereas the commission finds the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, will not alter the essential character of the area in which it is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, and will not have an undue visual, cultural, audible impact on the neighborhood or the park. Now therefore be resolved, the Lake George Park Commission hereby approves the above application with the following condition. Number 1, the subject dock modification may not be constructed prior to formal approval, notice of no jurisdiction from the Adirondack Park Agency. Also, draft condition number 2, the Finkelbrook Delta is dredged in such a manner so as to alleviate shallow water conditions around the subject dock. The dock shall be brought into compliance with the offshore limits set in the commission regulation. So moved.
Motion's made, motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I hear no nays. You're good to go. Thank you. Item 5, Hewlett's Landing wastewater system. You all know that the Park Commission is very deeply involved in, what's the figure of speech, in wastewater treatment and wastewater management. So Supervisor of Town of Dresden, Mr. Call, is going to talk to us about their new project. Some of us will get out of the way.
Not just for us.
Randy, can you check the light over there? So you can find the front light switch?
Light switch over there.
I think that might be the thing, push the screen up and down. That's probably good, thanks, Ray.
So I know, this is a recorded meeting, right? Because I know some of my constituents want to make sure they can look at it later. I'm going to be close to the microphone. I want to thank you for the opportunity here to present on behalf of our sewer district in Hewlett's Landing. And looking at you, the commissioners, some of you I've known for a good number of years. And I don't know if they'll admit it, but 2 of you have known me for over 50 years. And yeah, that's a long time. But I know none of you know or could even imagine that being here today, begging for money as the appointed town supervisor of Dresden is fulfilling my childhood dream. Right? So I'm here with the triumphant satisfaction of begging for money to help us manage what is, without a doubt, the most glamorous and essential economic aspect of our little hamlet. So allow me to please continue. I mean, most of you have some idea of what we have in Hewlett's Landing and in the town of Dresden. This is a picture from your website, the mapping of the sewer inspection systems of the homes in Dresden. There are 150 homes in Dresden that have private septics that are under your supervision or inspection, and about 140 of them are in this 3-mile stretch of Hewlett's Landing, stretching all the way from the end of one road to the end of Bluff Head Road. But what we're here to talk about is a smaller section that you zoom in. You can see we have this little section right here and this little section right here that aren't under your inspection because they are in one of our 2 sewer systems. We have 100 homes on our 2 sewer systems in Hewlett's Landing, and the density of these homes is even more dense than the tip of Cleverdale, just to give you an idea. And Cleverdale is all under your septic system review because they're all private septics. That's what we're dealing with here. It's called Eichlerville and Frederick's Point. Now, this didn't happen overnight because our septic system, our sewer system, was built on an earlier system dating back all the way before the Hewlett's Hotel and during the Hewlett's Hotel. And it's evolved over these decades on a need basis or a crisis basis, or in the 80s when DEC came in and said, you got to do this now. And was intended to be operated as a seasonal system. We had a study done in the 90s, the growth expectation in the 90s, and I have to thank Dave Wick. He shared all the history files of our town septic system that you had on file going back to the mid-80s. There's a lot to read. I don't think you have to. That's not what we're here today for. But one study said, oh, you're going to shrink in the 90s. Another study in 95 said, uh-oh, watch out, you're growing too fast. And here we are today, and we're operating from a study that we did get commissioned, I'll talk about that briefly, at 94% of our speedies permit on a couple of our outflows during the summer. And what we have is, not surprising, a number of our citizens just take everything for granted and the system is going to be there. And we have some very concerned citizens, like Susie here, who put together a lot of this material, who recognize from that study that we got commissioned 2 years ago with support and help by the LGA and Engineering Facilities Corp, that we have a lot of risks, known risks and unknown risks. And the known risks were kind of obvious. We have 2 pressurized outflows that go above Foster Brook. The risk is, and it raised a lot of attention, and that's why the study was commissioned, that when we get a lot of water flow, we can have logs coming down at 30 miles an hour, and after the rain stops, we end up with our pipes fortunately, not broken, covered with logs. This is why the most recent study was commissioned, and we now can move on to the unknown risks. The study was done, and it was a very minimal study, but an important study. It gave us more things to think about. We have a lot of unknown risks. How old are our beds? When will they fail? We don't want our sewer beds to go from the nice bed on the left to what is a failed bed on the right. So the engineering study's key points, which was done in 2024 by Labella, the key finding was, hey, you really need a much bigger study to plan ahead. We have an uncertain capacity. We need to assess that. Our infrastructure is aging. We have immediate and long-term planning needs. And we need to cover and take care of our environmental risks to make sure Lake George continues to be protected. So the next steps are here for us today. We decided to pursue Labella's Alternative 3, get a comprehensive study done. And the goal of this study is to get a better understanding of what we've got so that we can plan better and have a sustainable future with our sewer system. The estimated cost for this study, done last year, the estimated cost was $36,000, and that's what I'm here with my hat in hand for, to call for funding. Did I skip that? Yes. Without this study, we won't have the data that we need to ensure safe and reliable sewer. We have uncertainty, which means risks. We don't know when our system components will fail. We don't know if we have enough capacity for some of the growing houses. They all started as bungalows, which were under 1,000 square feet, 1.5 bedrooms and a bathroom. Now we've had a lot of rebuilds. And we're going to be fighting issues of capacity because we're already at 94%. But this study will become our roadmap to tell us what must be done now and what can wait and how to plan going forward. So we're committed to making a data-driven decisions for our future, and this study will provide us with the facts that we need, and we are respectfully requesting at your next meeting perhaps support by funding this study so we can ensure that one of the things we're most concerned about is the Lake George water quality stays pure. So that's my presentation. I hope you can make my childhood ambition become an adult reality. I'll address any questions.
I have not seen a specific scope for this study. Do you have one that you can present?
Certainly. I can certainly make the study available for all of you. The old study or what this new study is to do?
Well, both actually, but especially the new.
So I didn't want to bring all of that kind of detail today. I wanted to get you on board, but yes, I will definitely get that to you.
Okay, excellent.
So thanks, Charlie. I think what I would recommend to the board, I had conversations with DEC about this, and they're of course fully on board with advancing any program to move forward. Charlie's been very gracious with his time. Ken and I have been talking about this. I think there'd be a lot of value in us sitting down with Charlie and Labella or whomever they choose as a follow-up engineer with DEC in the room, and just kind of, as Tom suggests, just let's get a better understanding of what this might be. And then by the time we come back to our next meeting, our board can provide consideration to how, if the commission is going to be considering financial assistance to the town, what would that look like? What exactly would that entail in terms of the scope of work? How would we interact with the town? All those types of things. So if it's the chairman's discretion, we could get a few people together and start to have that conversation as soon as this week or next.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. This may prove to be one of the most important projects to the lake in my lifetime, my involvement, just by sheer numbers alone. I mean, I've learned something that I didn't learn. I thought we were talking about a combined septic system for a few houses, and we're not. It's for a lot of houses. So, yeah, it's important the commission that we provide.
One other question. You mentioned that that there were 2 systems, and this is just system number 1, not the other system. Is that correct, or is this both systems?
This is to take on both systems. Our goal here is to stop being reactive and complacent, but to get ahead of where we are and unify the systems on a legal basis, because one of them exists with a good sewer law, the other is just existing without even a sewer law. They're related to one another, but they're not sharing any infrastructure at this point. But
So hopefully this study would do both systems, and then give you help to get you a roadmap for the whole thing.
that's right, Bill.
Very good, thank you.
I think Hewlett's Landing is lucky to have you.
5 months in, maybe.
Hi, Charlie.
Yes, hi.
My question regards this study. I hope it will involve the fact that so many of the homes that there are 80, 81 hooked up to the sewer district right now. Many of them have been replaced with bigger homes
Yes,
with more bedrooms.
yes.
So when this was originally built, my dad happened to have been the clerk of works, which I like to tell people because I'm very proud of him for overseeing this. It was built according to those standards, and now there's so much more capacity in the new homes that have gone up, and I just feel that hopefully that will be looked at to make sure that the new system, if it's ever built, will be able to accommodate the extra use that's been put into these residences.
Absolutely, that is, Catherine, one of our concerns at this point, or mine. We have people who have built and expanded, and we have people who might want to in the future, that if we don't regulate this and manage it well, will have to be not allowed. We've put into place right now in our town the first ever related to zoning in the town of Dresden. We've relied on the APA, and that is anything that's built in the sewer district areas needs to get compliant with any expansion or any new build. So we're monitoring it, but you're absolutely right. We have to be addressing the fact, and we know the fact, that it's more than doubled the amount of volume that comes through in the last 20 years.
Yeah, thank you.
This is not a maybe project, this is a gotta-do project.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions, any other discussion? I'm sure it'll be on next month's agenda. Okay.
All right.
What do we got next here? Traveling chair. Hemlock, woolly, Adelgid, I never can pronounce it.
Adelgid.
Adelgid? I always start.
Nobody gets it right.
New York State Hemlock Initiative, Allison McKenna. Dave, will you do?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, talkers.
So next on our agenda, we have Allison McKenna. Allison is the field team leader for the New York State Hemlock Initiative. She's in charge of the Adirondack crew. She coordinates the surveying, treatment, and all the field data collection in the Lake George watershed. I'm just getting to know Allie, but she is the boots on the ground, knows what's happening here in the Lake George area. So what we've been talking about, there is a pretty good, robust collection of professionals that have been working collectively to try to advance our knowledge of and treatment of the invasive hemlock woolly adelgid in the Lake George Park. It's called the Lake George Hemlock Coalition. And Allie is a key player in that, doing a lot of the field assessment and field work and treatments. So I asked Allie if she would come here today and just provide just an overview of what's happening in Lake George Park. And we also have a resolution for your consideration to significantly bolster some of those field level efforts within the funding that we have available through the EPF. So Allie, we thank you for your time and coming up here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dave. It is really great to be here with everyone, and I'm just going to give a quick overview of what the situation is with hemlock woolly adelgid in Lake George and the role that New York State Hemlock Initiative is taking in trying to manage. So just some quick basic information about hemlock woolly adelgid. It is a really tiny aphid-like insect that's native to southern Japan. And it attaches to the twigs of our eastern hemlock trees, and eventually it can cause the death of those twigs, basically just by the mechanical action of that little aphid mouth part going into the twig. And though they're really tiny insects, you can see right there on the branch, there's some, let's see if this pointer will show us, yeah. It might be a little difficult to see, but there's some little fuzzy white stuff along the twig right there. So those are the tiny little hemlock woolly adelgid insects. And those tiny things can kill a really beautiful mature hemlock tree in as little as 3 to 4 years if left untreated. So hemlock woolly adelgid arrived in New York State in the 1980s, probably on some infested nursery stock. And it was originally introduced into the New York City area and the Hudson Valley. And this was confirmed to have spread to the Lake George watershed in 2017, with the first infestation being found at Prospect Mountain. The visual here is actually you can see these little yellow hexagons. So these are actually positive hemlock woolly adelgid detections throughout New York State. So you can see it's quite widespread here in western New York and the Hudson Valley, but it really is kind of just starting to creep up into the Adirondacks. So we're hoping to keep a handle on it and keep it from becoming infested. So the impact that this could have on the forest in the Adirondacks is pretty significant. Eastern hemlock makes up about 10% of our forest here in the Adirondack Park. And hemlock is a really essential species for wildlife. It is really important for keeping the quality of drinking water cool and clean. And then they're also just really, really beautiful trees, and they provide a lot of aesthetic value, as well as being an essential component of the ecosystem. And so I'll just talk a little bit about New York State Hemlock Initiative's objectives with managing this insect as it advances into the Adirondack Park. So we have kind of a three-pronged effort, and the parts of that are: first, we are conducting extensive field surveys to figure out where in the park this insect is present. The second part is, once we figure out where it is, we are using really targeted insecticide treatments to kind of suppress the populations of the hemlock woolly adelgid. And the third part is by establishing a population of another insect as a biological control agent to eat the hemlock woolly adelgid and hopefully keep it at a level that's okay for our forests and not damaging. So in 2024, just in our autumn field season, the Hemlock Initiative field crew surveyed almost 3,000 acres around Lake George. Lots of help from DEC and wonderful volunteers. And we checked over 8,000 trees for hemlock woolly adelgid right around the Lake George watershed. Here I've just gone through a couple of the areas that we've been focusing a lot of our work on. So you can see we've done quite a lot of work around Buck Mountain, Pilot Knob, the Shelving Rock area, Red Rock Bay, the ridge leading up to Mount Erebus, and then also a Lake George Land Conservancy property up by Ticonderoga. On the west side of the lake, we have surveyed Hearthstone Campground. We've done a little bit around Sabbath Day Point, Pole Hill Pond. We're doing a lot of work on the Tongue Range, and we just got up to Indian Pond as well to look for the hemlock woolly adelgid. based on what we found last fall, we treated a whole heck of a lot of trees. It was really, really successful, and I'm thrilled with how our work is going so far. We treated 67 acres around Lake George of infested hemlock, and it was over 1,000 trees. And I'm just, you can see a lot of that was on the Tongue Range, but we also treated quite a lot around Red Rock Bay and then some around Buck Mountain as well. And so that kind of brings us to the third part of our management strategy for hemlock woolly adelgid, which is to hopefully use these pesticide treatments to protect the hemlock while we work on getting our biocontrol insects established. So Hemlock Initiative is using 2 different biocontrol insects that they're natural predators of the hemlock woolly adelgid where it's native. And basically, once these establish, they'll eat the hemlock woolly adelgid and keep it at a level that's not going to be devastating to our eastern hemlock. So we have basically a little tiny black ladybug called Laricobius, and we are working on getting Laricobius established around Lake George, as well as a silver fly called Leucotoraxis. So hopefully when we protect these really beautiful, important areas of hemlock, we're buying time for these insects to establish and manage the hemlock woolly adelgid for us going forward. And moving forward, we're just hoping to do a whole lot more survey and a whole lot more treatment. The numbers that I showed you earlier were just from our fall season in 2024. So in 2025, I'm looking forward to getting a lot more done. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to treat far more than those 67 acres that we got done in the fall, especially if there's additional support and funding for the Hemlock Initiative. So that's about all I have, but I'm really happy to answer any questions that anybody has. Yes?
2 questions. The early slide showed the white specks on the
Yes.
tree. Is that actually the wool that they put on in the wintertime?
That's the wool, yeah.
What months can we see that?
So it's most visible in winter, really. That's the best time to be able to see it.
Like
Probably
3 months or longer than that?
Yeah, probably around December through March. But that wool will actually stay on the tree all year round.
Oh, it will?
That's just when.
That was my question.
Yeah, so it'll continue to be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's actively needed in the dead of winter, but it's visible other times of the year. Okay.
Yep. So that wool is actually it's kind of like an egg sac. If you know how spiders will lay egg sacs, it's kind of like the same deal for them to lay their eggs, and then it just stays on the tree after they hatch and become adults.
The other question is the 2 insect species that you're targeting,
Yes.
are they native to this area or where are they native to?
The Laricobius and the Leucotoraxis are not native to New York State. Laricobius, I believe, is native to Japan in the native range of the hemlock woolly adelgid, and then the Leucotoraxis is from the West Coast because there's actually some native hemlock woolly adelgid out on the West Coast.
I assume there's research going on to make sure that they don't become a problem themselves.
Oh yes, they go through extensive testing.
We've made that mistake before.
Yes, and they are going through like very rigorous studies to basically make sure that they will starve before they will eat anything other than hemlock woolly adelgid. Yes.
Are you going to survey the islands at all?
Yes, so there's an ongoing effort with DEC and with us to survey all of the islands in Lake George. And unfortunately, some of them have shown signs of infestation, so there's treatment plans for those as well.
So actually, Joe, we offered to do the islands ourselves. We're lucky enough to have Ben Marshall, I don't know, Ben's in the back there, right? With that, Ben used to do hemlock woolly adelgid surveys and treatments and is very knowledgeable in the topic. So I've offered our lieutenant and our patrol staff to kind of shuttle around some of the staff and get trained by Ben and others we would take that part off of that program and save the money for surveying the islands. Our patrol is out there all day, every day, and we have free rides. And so we'll get trained, and we're going to do that, Joe, so they can focus on those upland areas that are a little bit harder to get to.
How do we treat the entire tree from the ground level?
There are a few methods that are being employed. The most common method that we use at Hemlock Initiative and that DEC uses as well is a basal bark application of pesticide. So essentially, we're just going around the tree and saturating the lower several feet of the trunk. And this is great because it avoids large amounts of soil contamination, which can be a problem with other application methods. Stem injection is another method that is used, where we drill holes into the tree and inject the pesticide directly into the vascular tissue, but it is less cost-effective and a lot slower to do it that way. So we're employing those two methods, kind of based on the site where it makes sense.
That
Yes.
was my question. So you don't have any concerns about any of that chemical leaching through the tree, into the ground, eventually into the lake?
Yeah, so the chemical that we're using and the way that we're applying it, essentially, we give a buffer in between the edge of the water or any kind of flowing water that is going into the lake and the trees that we're treating. So we won't treat anything that's directly on the edge of the lake or something, say, like in the middle of a stream bed where water might come and take that pesticide into the water. Those trees that are kind of like right on the edge, if they are infested, are really good candidates for the stem injection because all of that chemical is just going to go up into the crown, and it really shouldn't be causing any issues with the water.
And Allie, you're operating under DEC permit, which only allows a certain percentage of trees to be treated, correct?
That's correct, yeah. It's actually the label restrictions on the pesticide that we're using. We can only spray a certain number of trees per acre on an annual basis. So I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but yeah, it's unfortunately we can't treat every tree in every 1 acre block that we select.
So what happens to those trees?
To the trees that don't get treated? So there's a couple options for those. One purpose that they serve is actually as food for the biocontrol insects that we're releasing, because some of these sites, like on the tongue, we have actually done some pesticide treatment and then some biocontrol release on the same site. So the trees that have been treated with the pesticide will basically remain healthy and be beautiful and produce seed for future hemlock seedlings to be able to grow. And then the trees that are not being treated, unfortunately, they will continue to be infested with hemlock woolly adelgid. But the hope is that our 2 biocontrol insects will be able to hunt for the HWA on those trees and establish populations. It's possible that in years going forward, we can revisit the same sites and treat some of the trees that didn't get treated in previous years as well.
Thank you.
Yes?
Are you using the same methods throughout the state, the Northeast?
Throughout the state, yes. It's pretty much all the basal bark spray and the stem injection treatments. In some areas of the eastern hemlock range, land managers will use a soil drench where they mix up the insecticide with water, and then they'll pour it basically in a ring around the tree into the soil. But Hemlock Initiative and DEC don't favor that method just because of potential contamination risks to groundwater.
I just wanted to
Yes.
get clarification. It sounds like your goal is not complete eradication of HWA, but just some level of control to keep them at bay. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. Our hope is ultimately that we can kind of bring the HWA into balance in the ecosystem, where it will probably still cause some degree of eastern hemlock mortality, but it's not going to wipe them out. It's not going to be a significant, it's not going to cause significant hemlock death is the goal. And hopefully, yeah, with the 2 biocontrol insects, they'll just keep it in check. Yes.
You noted that out in the west, there's a natural bug of this nature. And have they found a balance? Because all the trees are at risk, generally speaking, when you're not doing anything to the healthy trees. So have they found a balance with a natural situation out in California or West?
Yeah, so that's where our Leucotoraxis fly comes from, actually, and that is a big part of why there's that balance out west, is because the Leucotoraxis fly is native to that area, and they can basically they keep the hemlock woolly adelgid in check out there. So we're hoping that when it's introduced here, that it'll kind of have a similar effect.
Is there a cycle? Because I can distinctly remember the end of the summer of 2023. But unless I missed it, I didn't think it was as bad last year.
Was that from the hemlock woolly adelgid, or perhaps?
Yes, it was pretty much defoliated.
So I actually just came onto this project this past fall, so I'm not entirely sure what the situation was with the defoliation in 2023, but generally, depending on our winter conditions, we can see kind of a cycle where if there's like a really intense, sudden cold snap, it'll kill a lot of the hemlock woolly adelgid, and then sometimes the following year, we'll see less infestation of the trees, but it's really dependent on that winter weather, so that can affect it a lot.
How cold is severe?
Off the top of my head, gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't come prepared.
This winter has been cold, but not severe.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking in our lab, I think of it being like in the negative temperatures for severe, and what was found in one of the studies that we reviewed was that it's really like the hemlock woolly adelgid does really badly with like sudden cold snaps. Like if we have kind of like ambient, like nice temperatures, and then all of a sudden it plummets, that's what causes the really significant mortality. It kind of shocks them, I think. Yeah.
That was excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, so much.
Thank you.
So even outside of our watershed, people are paying attention. People really throughout the Adirondacks. This is kind of a bit of a lab for the Adirondacks, which is one of the reasons that we kind of formed this whole hemlock coalition of DEC and ICD and LTA, Park Commission, and everybody else. Even just north of us, the Scroon Lake watershed folks, there's a group called the East Shore Scroon Lake Association. Gary Carl is their president. They've been paying attention and are eager to help us do what we can to help slow the spread and keep it out of Scroon Lake watershed for similar reasons. And on the resolution, you'll see they've generously offered to donate $10,000 private dollars towards this project. So you'll hear that on the resolution shortly, but people are paying attention to Lake George experience.
Very good. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Item number 7, 2025 Lake George recreational use study scope of work.
We still have a resolution, Ken, for HWA.
Resolution 2025-09, approval of project funding. Do we have that?
Resolution to support the Lake George hemlock woolly HWA field staff. Whereas the Lake George Park Commission is an important regional partner and leader in invasive species prevention and management efforts. And whereas the hemlock woolly adelgid is relatively recent invasive towards the extent of the Lake George Park Commission, and that the potential to disseminate a large percentage of the forest cover in our watershed over the coming decades, and there is a consortium of organizations organizations and agencies currently working together to advance invasive management in the Lake George Park, and the field work to survey for and to treat HWA has been ongoing, but staffing has been limited to funding challenges. And whereas the New York State Hemlock Initiative, working through the Lake George Hemlock Coalition, has put forth a proposal to the Commission whereby trained field staff can be increased significantly for reasonable cost. And whereas the Park Commission seeks to be an active partner in battling this invasive spores, best through coordination and management actions at this critical time in this invasive presence in the Lake George Park. And whereas the East Shore Spoon Lake Association also wishes to assist in the funding effort by putting forth $10,000 towards the project with a donation to the Lake George Park Commission for this cause. Now therefore be resolved, the Lake George Park Commission accepts the proposal from the New York State Hemlock Coalition to fund the cost of one 6-month seasonal technician and one 3-month seasonal technician in 2025 for a cost not to exceed $40,000, with $30,000 from the Commission and $10,000 from the East Shore Spoon Lake Association. Further resolved that the Commission Executive Director is hereby authorized to expend up to the combined $40,000 in support of the 2025 HWA survey and treatment efforts in the Lake George Park through the New York State Hemlock Initiative Program. So moved.
Second. Motion's made, motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no nays, it's carried.
Thank you.
Do we have, are you doing a presentation
One more
also?
presentation, yeah.
I'll stay standing.
It's a presentation day.
The Park Commission did a recreation study of the lake and surrounding area in 2005, and we updated that in 2015, and so now it's 2025. So simple math guides us, and we have retained these folks to gather the information necessary for us to make a new decision and upgrade and revise our rec study. So it's yours.
Thank you. So I'll start us off. Kirsten Catalier from Studio A with Tracy Clothier and Jeff Anthony, part of our project team, and I'll do a little project introduction in a minute, team introduction. But I just want to start off and say thank you for choosing our team to work with you all on this project. We are beyond excited. We've already jumped right in. And it really hits home for all of us, actually, because we not only grew up here, live here still, recreate, we find any opportunity we can to get on the water and just, get out on the boats, hiking on the trails, and really involved in the community. So this is extremely exciting for our team, and we're super excited. So just a little team introduction. Kirsten Catalier from Studio A. I'm a landscape architect. I'm going to work with Tracy and Jeff on just running the project, managing it. We have Tracy Clothier from Clothier Planning and Consulting. She's a project team member. She's going to lead a lot of the research and the field investigations, analysis of the data, the surveys, inventories, and a lot of the analysis of the boater activity. And then Jeff Anthony, he's also a landscape architect, environmental scientist, and he's going to work with with the two of us to really guide the research, the inventory analysis, prepare the report, and do a lot of the overall findings at the end. But one fun thing too is that we have two of the three members are here from the last study, the 2015. So we're extremely excited that they can continue to update this study for the 2025, and I'm excited just to join the fun on this project. So overall, there's 3 study objectives and goals that we're going to work towards throughout this entire process over the course of the next year. The first one's the data collection and analysis. There's a lot of data that we're going to be collecting. We're going to be working with the Lake George Park Commission, a lot of different user groups to really gather that and analyze it to see where the trends have been going over the last 10 years. The next one's the recreation perception study. So we're going to assess the user perceptions of their recreational experience on Lake George. This is a very key component to this study. And then also too, we're going to do a surface use assessment. And this will evaluate the overall capacity that Lake George can handle for, safe and enjoyable recreation. And then we will work towards these 3 objectives, and at the end we will have a whole findings and summary report that we will present to you all. And I'll let Tracy and Jeff jump in a little more in depth into the 3 study objectives.
Just this one right here. Hi, everybody. Good morning. So the data collection is a task that we will work with the Park Commission on, basically, finding marine patrol reports, boat registrations and dock registrations, marina permits, recreational use permits, boat inspection reports, boat rental data where we can get it, launch information. And there may be more, but that's the basis that we can compare it to the 2015 report and see whether numbers have gone up, what happened during COVID. And, we all know there was actually more traffic during the pandemic, and then it stepped back a bit. So we want to look at those patterns and see what's key for today. The second part is this survey. This is going to be, we're going to launch an online survey early summer, and we're going to sit down and come up with a bunch of questions that we think all users will enjoy filling out and give us useful information. We'll create a direct hyperlink, probably use SurveyMonkey. That's the platform I'm most familiar with, and it's easy to use. And we'll establish a QR code so that it'll be really easy for people to, point and click basically, and do a short survey. Shouldn't take more than 10 minutes to do that. And again, we'll use a lot of the questions from the last survey in 2015, and this will enable us to be able to compare perceptions of use from 10 years ago. How are we going to get the word out there? Well, we're going to use press releases and web pages, social media. We're going to rely on our partners like the LGA, the municipalities, the Land Conservancy, boat clubs. There are many more boat clubs out there now, marinas, the resorts and chambers of commerce, Silver Bay, all kinds of places that have their own email lists. We can give them the information, they can create the blast themselves. And I found that this is a really reliable way to get a lot of feedback from people out there. And, we'll be able to assess, who these people are by, asking them, are you a boat owner? Are you just out on the lake for the day? Are you renting a boat? You'll be able to see what category or class of users that they are. So that is the second part of this study. The third part is the surface use assessment. Now, basically, we are looking at, what's going on in the lake with boat traffic. What are the trends? What are the numbers? What are the types of boats? How are they utilizing the lake? We're going to have 3 helicopter trips over the lake, one during the July 4th weekend, weather dependent, folks, for which day that is, but 4th of July falls on a Friday, which is an interesting day to try, but Saturday and Sunday, it's just going to depend on the weather, because we're looking for near peak times. So again, we can kind of compare it. I think 10 years ago, we picked a date. It was a decent day. It was actually projected to be a nicer day than it turned out to be. But we had good numbers out there. But we're going to follow that up with another peak day on Labor Day, which is a Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And again, we'll have to choose our weather day, best weather day. And then we're going to compare it to a non-peak day. We really want to see what's going on. We'll pick a weekday the last week of July or the first week of August. Again, weather's good. Weather has to be in there. And that'll be a good comparison point to just a regular old day on Lake George. This map on the right is a zone map, and we used this in 2015, and I've forgotten how many zones there are, I can't read that, but there are many, many zones, and this is the way we're able to compare data from the prior year, 2015, 10 years ago, by actually targeting different areas of the lake with our boat counts. And, it's not going to be enough, right? We need to supplement that with some individual bay counts during the summertime. And some of us will conduct those, although I only have a kayak, so I'll probably be in the South Basin making observations about the unbelievable amounts of non-motorized boats that are down in that bay on nice weekend days, and how there are some conflicts going on down there with the bigger boats. You have the rental boats that stream out of there, you have public docks, you have 5 steamboat-type boats, and you have Million Dollar Beach and the launch there. So it's an amazing area which, you're not going to capture, data only captures so much, right? But you don't capture all the near misses. You don't capture the observations that are made out there. You don't capture that, well, I saw that, or I think that just happened. And that's why we'll probably be using volunteer observation scouts. And some of you may choose to participate, which would be great. We'll assign you a place to go, and this is just a great way of getting people involved and interested in this whole thing, whole study. And taken individually, these 3 aspects of the study are really great. But when you put them all together, then they tell the story of recreation on Lake George in 2025. Any questions about this part of the study? Well, I'll be taking volunteers later. Jeff is there.
Tracy, maybe you want to highlight, you contracted, or you're going to be working with helicopter?
Yes,
maybe?
of course. We're going to be using Bruce Mowery, who you see always going over Lake George constantly, and Carl Heilman is a professional photographer, who you also know. They do this all the time, and they were the contractors in the 2015 study. And so they've already committed their time to this, and they are extremely pleased to be part of it. And we're even talking to Carl about producing the July 4th weekend, producing still shots going up the lake to the north, and then you have to come back. So he might be shooting a video with his, I can't remember everything, but it's a GoPro system that he uses to shoot video down the lake, which would be an interesting visual tool to provide for people to understand what's going on Lake George.
What's the next one? Stay here with me.
Yeah.
Okay, the public outreach meetings, we have scheduled 2 of them. The very first one will be a meeting somewhat similar to what we're doing right now to introduce the project to the general public. And it will also introduce our study approach and our goals, and it will invite some participation from the group of people who attend. That will happen sometime early May or into June. And the second public meeting that we're committed to doing is basically a final presentation, which will take place either late December, most likely January of 2026, after the report's completed. In that meeting, we'll be presenting our data findings, perception study information, the surface use assessment information, and our public comment results. And so those are the 2 meetings that you can look forward to that will be happening with the general public. Obviously, we are not going to limit it to that. We are committed to meeting almost monthly with this commission and presenting monthly reports. At the end of every one of the 3 major phases of work that we've presented here that Tracy has, there will be an interim report. It'll be an interim report that will hopefully have all of our data that we gathered during those 3 phases. And we're doing that purposefully so that we don't give you one big lump of information at the end of December to say, here's the report, go study it. We're going to say, here's a piece, the first piece. digest it, read it, get back comments to it, we'll talk about it. Here's the next piece, we give you an interim report, study it, read it, get back to us, we'll make adjustments or whatever you want, and here's the third piece, and then we'll pull them all together with the final report at the very end of December, beginning of January. And I think that that's a good way of approaching this project, because I know if I was sitting in your shoes, I wouldn't want to get a 100-page report and say, read it in 2 days or 3 days before the next meeting, and I'd like your comment. That doesn't work. So we're hoping to work with the commission, attend many of your meetings, give you interim reports along the way, have interim discussions with you along the way, and obviously work very closely with LGA staff in gathering the data, which we're going to be starting next week. We've started talking to Joe about that, and we'll be gathering that data right away, starting next week. Just to talk about our schedule, we look at this as basically 3 large sections of work based on the calendar. Our first one is to do the data gathering and information gathering and analysis of past information between now and summer, develop our questionnaires or our survey information before then, and have that all packaged and ready to go by, say, Memorial Day, roughly that period of time. Then we have the summer. Summer's going to be our fun time. We're going to be out in the water, we're going to be up in the air, we're going to be gathering all kinds of information. The 3 flights have been committed with Bruce Mowry and North Country Heli Flight. Like Tracy said, the first one is they're all scheduled, the 3 major ones are scheduled for 1 to 4 o'clock, which is flexible, and which would be probably the height of the boating day in terms of traffic on the lake. And so the first one is July 5, which is in the afternoon, and July 6, which is a Sunday, would be the rain date, and if neither of those work, we'll have to pick something else or we'll watch something. The Labor Day one is on the Saturday of Labor Day, with Sunday being the rain day. And the midweek one is the last Wednesday in July, with the first Wednesday in August being the rain day. And so they've been committed with Carl and with Bruce. We're locked in with their helicopter for those days. And so that's what you could expect to see us doing on those days. In between those days, like Tracy said, we're not going to just rely on the data we gather from those 3 flights. We have, Studio A has a drone. We have 2 boats on the water, 2 regular boats on the water, which are registered, by the way, with the Park Commission. We pay our money. And we will be on the lake doing our own on-lake studies and using a drone basically to go to some of the higher use bays and higher use areas and areas where we perceive there may be issues or problems that we want to tackle. So our staff will be doing those kinds of things. Like Tracy said, she'll be pretty much covering the South Basin, and her kayak will be covering mid-lake and north portions of the lake out of Bolton Landing where we live. And that way we will hopefully be supplementing the aerial flights with more information that we can gather on specific areas of the lake that we would want to study. Now, that doesn't mean that when we do the helicopter flight, we're going to just run up the lake and run down the lake. And talking to Bruce, it takes about an hour and a half to go up and down the lake, and that's just a constant flight. Well, we're going to slow that down and go a little slower so Carl can take pictures on the way up, take them on the way down. But in the 4-hour period that we've scheduled, we've got another 2 hours that we can go back and take some additional photographs. When we see our trip going up and down a lake, and we say, hey, there's something we really want to look at more over there, we want to look at something more over there, we can either stop right away and take a peek, or we can come back, and we got the time budgeted for a 4-hour, maybe even 5-hour trip on all 3 days with the helicopter. So, that's our process. Now, the last phase, that we hope to have completed by Labor Day, right after Labor Day, because Labor Day is really the end of the field work portion of the project, or significant end of the field work portion. Well, I think I do a lot of boating in the fall, and I like to figure out what's going on in the fall too. So we won't be using a helicopter in the fall, but we will be going out on the lake and using the drone. And I do most of my fishing in the fall, so I don't like to be on the water during summer fishing. But we will be on the water doing that with drones and other stuff into September. That's another piece that I'd like to cover with this study. So that will be ending early fall. Then our last piece of work, our last section of work will be the compilation of the final report. What does all this information mean? Putting all the pieces back together again, comparing it to the 2015 report, and writing the report. And that will happen from basically sometime in September on through until end of November, early December, where we're hopefully giving the commission a interim report before the end of the year, and then getting your comments on it, and then having a final one available by, the January of 2026 for presentation to the public. Now, just like we did last time, Tracy and I did this project in 2015 when we were employed elsewhere, and we also not only have one big report, which is a choker, and a lot of people didn't probably read the whole darn thing, but we had a summary report, which is really taking the basic information in that big report and toning it down, getting it the good bits and pieces that the general public might would want to read, and everybody else might want to read, and it could have wider distribution. So it's a document that can be printed at less cost than this whole big fat book, and it'll be one that could be made for wider distribution. So those are the products that will be coming out of the final report. Do we have another one here or not?
No.
No, that's it, okay.
That'll be a coffee table book, right? Like our other one was. It's a nice little coffee table book that people pick up and they go, oh, I didn't know that. One thing I didn't mention was we're going to rely on some interviews, special interviews, one-on-one. One set of interviews will be with elected officials, 9, I think, around the lake. We want to make sure we get our supervisors from the east side as well as the west, and the mayor of Lake George Village. And, just get their overall general idea of what they see. And people come into them, they, we have this problem, or noise, or wakes, or, whatever it is. And they'll be able to express that to us. And also the individual marina owners. They have just a huge collection of observation, ideas. They hear from their constituents all the time. So that'll be an important component that will also help tie this all together.
Yeah, and I would like to supplement that by saying that Studio A has worked with several of the marina owners in the past, or I have, and so I know a lot of them personally. Tracy knows a lot of them personally. They won't be adverse to sitting down with us and talking, because we're kind of also friendly with them. They're friends. And some of the other groups that we would like to talk to, Chambers of Commerce, like Bolton has Chamber of Commerce. There's a Chamber of Commerce here, one up north. So they get probably a lot of questions, or people stopping into their shops or offices and saying, what? And so, and then the Lake George Land Conservancy, they have their little office in Bolton. So those people get a lot of contact with the public, and so we really want to get that feedback personally, not just through the questionnaires that'll be sent to the general public, but that's more of the personal contact between people that live in a lake basin and work in a lake basin and have businesses in lake basin that have data that we really want to grab and get.
So what do you think of this approach?
Great. How will you be transporting us back for the 2005?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, that was a while ago. Yeah. Well, and of course, if any of you have any input into this study, if we've left things out that you think that we should be considering, certainly get in touch with Dave, let him know, he can convey it to us.
Yeah. A question about the public meetings. Would you be allowing Zoom access, so that you might have the opportunity to get more people who could participate at that level?
Yes, I think we have to. Today, that it's all about the Zoom access. You only get a few people to public meetings typically, but when you open it up, boy, you get a lot more information. And we'll post the presentations and what have you on the websites so that people can access those as well.
I think, Jeff, you mentioned it, that you have relationships with the marinas. So as a general statement for some people might be fearful about this in terms of their business or restrictions and things of that nature. So how do you go out and say this is for everybody's benefit and sell it up front so that if there's no adversarial potential, that you draw everybody's points in? I mean, we got to study this lake, and we got to come up with what's happening so we can figure out how to make it
I think
forever.
We're not looking to get their business plan. We're not looking to get their financial information in any way. we're looking to get their feedback from their customers and what they see in terms of boat or lake use trends and things on the lake. We've worked for several of the marinas. I know the owners personally. I'm not going to mention names today because I don't want to intimidate them, but I know that some of them keep really good records of their boating launches and users information. And in the 2015 study, I actually talked to a couple of them who I'm very close to, and they shared their data with me. And they said, here's our daily launch records. Take a look at them. Tells you a story. And so I might not get that from every marina on a lake, but we do know enough of them that we can get some interesting data and trends that will help the study. And again, all of this information is parts, they're pieces. They're pieces that go into the final story. And then, so we may not get 100% of them, but we're going to get a good number of them. So like I say, this is not an attempt to analyze their business. It's an attempt to gather their information from what they hear.
It sounds like you have a way to sell them. This is a positive action for everybody.
Right.
And that if we all provide good data,
right,
we'll have a good blueprint.
Right, exactly.
And this report is something that our commission uses year-round. Often when we're making a variance or a marina has a question about expansion or a change of operation or anything, it's a very valuable project. Looking forward to it. Yes.
Yeah, we're looking forward to this project too. It's not only it's a worthwhile project, but it's also a very fun project for us.
It's noted for this room that the Park Commission did its due diligence and we did seek bids, and we had a couple of other bids, and they were very qualified, but we went with our local folks because they are very qualified, the price was right, and they're friends. So it's a good project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Are we done with the screen?
We are.
Yep.
You want volunteers, Tracy?
Look at you.
You want volunteers?
Yeah. There you go. Always something.
So, Mr. Chairman, on that topic, we expect to be working with their team probably weekly. Joe and Randy will be doing a huge amount of data. Joe Johns will be bringing a lot of data from the Marine Patrol. So we're going to be working on it as a part of our business all the time, but if there's commissioners that wish to be more engaged, maybe we'll probably meet more monthly, more formally, just status updates. If at some point you wanted to select vote for a committee to sit in, just at the board level, that's completely your discretion, of course.
Very good. I was a committee of one once, back in the days when you could still anchor a boat in Paradise Bay. My wife and I stopped at the gun for dinner, and we motored up slowly in our sailboat. And the next morning, we're sitting on the deck having coffee. We were the only ones in Paradise Bay, and in came two jet skis with local out-of-state numbers on them. And the man looks up to me and says, "Is this Paradise Bay?" And I said, "It was about a minute and a half ago." So that was the first recreation boat study. And let's check that off as being done. Thank you. Item 8, Priscilla Core Outcome Summary and Invasive Management Plan with LGA. Let me take this as an opportunity. We have here today as our, not a guest, he's a member now. Brendan Wilsey is the new Executive Director of the LGA, taking time out of his extremely busy schedule to be here this morning and see if we're real or not. So thanks for being here this morning, Brendan. We appreciate it. Welcome to the community and all that good kind of stuff.
Thanks.
And don't be afraid to tout your Paul Smith's relationship. So, where are we with this?
So on that topic, I thought, you kind of introduced the idea of us sitting down with the LGA, their chairman, John Kelly, and Brendan, their new executive director. So we had a recent couple of meetings. I thought they're very productive. and Joe Stanek, our vice chairman, has been sitting in as well. I thought maybe Joe Thune would highlight kind of where we are currently with the idea of an outcome summary and an invasive species management plan, because Joe's kind of heading that part of it up, on our side anyway.
Thank you. Yeah, we had a great meeting last week with Brendan and John Kelly. And, they've been taking water samples and sediment samples, plant samples. The commission has been doing plant surveys, taking water samples. And so we have all this data and a shared objective of sort of looking at that data and getting a message out to the public. So we'll be doing that probably in the next week or so, coming up with a summary document, identifying any trends and the findings, and putting that out, together jointly, which would be good. And then moving forward, as far as ongoing management, we'll be developing a shared operation plan or management plan that identifies, typical methods of milfoil management and how we do things on Lake George. So the scope of that work is still pending, but we'll be working with them as well. So that way we sort of have a joint guidebook or playbook for how we manage milfoil and take it to different steps, different management options. So all good stuff, sort of summarizing where we've been and what we've been doing on the science side, and then a guidebook that we'll jointly develop on how we'll do management in the future. So we're excited for that. It seems like a great direction, and happy to have the opportunity to sit down with those folks and come up with some good products.
Very good. Anybody have any comments to that? These meetings that we have are sometimes interesting because state law only allows us to have up to 5 commissioners at a meeting without going through the public notice and whatnot, and that's just a burden on us sometimes, but we do work around that successfully, hopefully. Anybody else have any more comments? Moving on, do we have a law enforcement committee report?
We do. The Law Enforcement Committee met at 9 o'clock this morning, and Lieutenant Joe Johns gave us an update, and the first was about equipment. We have a new patrol truck, and I think it's a Ford 450, and which is pretty cool. And we, all the docks at Green Island, all the plans are, these are the new docks, the plans are back. They're, excuse me, they're going to go to state for bids and we will have it back for the March meeting for a resolution. And the boater safety classes, we all need to be certified. The classes for April 12th, May 17th, and June 14th are full. Well, I guess the June 14th still has 9 openings. And there's going to be a new class on July 7 and 8, which just went out yesterday. So, get on board if you need to. The DEC was short of a mechanic this winter due to illness, and it would be nice if we could have some PWC lifts at the boathouse to keep the jet skis in the water. And one thing I would like to say as far as the new docks out on Green Island, there's going to be basically 2 docks, and one will have be big enough to put our 36-foot pumper boat that we pump out the islands, and there will be 6 boats on the other dock. And as far as overdue fees, thanks to Joe Stanek, who helped to track a lot of these people that needed to pay their fees up, and Joe did a great job, and we collected about $3,700. And we had a good presentation by Dave on the invasive species and the good collaboration that's going down with us and the LGA, which is wonderful. And then I just motioned for adjournment, and it was passed. Anything else? Any additions or deletions that you'd like to put in? You might have missed? Okay, then I will read the resolution 2025-10, acceptance of the law enforcement report, whereas the Law Enforcement Committee met on February 25th, 2025, to review matters pertaining to the Lake George Park Commission's Marine Patrol and the Commission's law enforcement program, and whereas the active law enforcement cases and their status were reviewed in executive session, and whereas the Law Enforcement Committee has reported on the results of that committee meeting at this full commission meeting, and whereas the Law Enforcement Committee recommends acceptance of this month's law enforcement report. Now therefore it be resolved that the commission accepts the report of the Law Enforcement Committee. So moved.
Second.
Motion made, motion seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Carried, thank you. Almost final item of number 10, Resolution 2025-11, which involves the truck.
Resolution 2025-11, whereas the Lake George Park Commission and Marine Patrol plays a pivotal role in public safety, and whereas maintenance of the Marine Patrol emergency response vessels involves routine launch and retrieval of these at the State Marina Mechanical Facility on Green Island, and whereas the Commission Marine Patrol officers assist the New York State Parks with professional on-water training for law enforcement professionals across the state, which necessitates trailering vessels extended distances, and whereas in the course of their official duties, Commission Marine Patrol officers must transport members of the public for arrest processing, and whereas the Commission Marine Patrol operations are dependent on a suitable vehicle for vessel trailing and prisoner transport, and whereas the Commission Marine Patrol currently utilizes a 2007 Suburban with 180,000 miles, which has outlasted its usefulness for the purposes, and whereas the Commission staff has undertaken a formal bid process for a new 2025 Ford F-250 with law enforcement upfittings, and in response have received a single bid from Greenwich Ford for $57,737.60. Now therefore be resolved that the Commission authorizes the Executive Director to sign a purchase order for the purchase and delivery of one 2025 Ford F-250 not to exceed $58,000, consistent with the state contract pricing of New York State finance law and contingent on the approval of the New York State OGS and New York State Division of Budget. So moved.
Before we second it, I need to make a correction. I thought I heard Joe say we bought a F-450, and I was like, whoa, 4.5 ton, that's a big truck. But I had said that in my report, but it was a 250, so I just wanted that on the record. Thank you.
Motion's been made, motion's been seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no nays? We've got it. Finally, but not lastly, number 11, our public comments. Anybody care to tell us how we're doing?
It's easy. You're doing awesome.
We have,
I want to rephrase
we have
that.
an update. We have an update on your last report?
David Hartman, I live on a resident Assembly Point, and just reaching out again to try and create awareness with what I see with people using lake water, well water too, but as it pertains to Lake George, a lot of residents use lake water. People are unaware of UV sleeves. They change their bulbs, they don't change their sleeves. I brought my display again. And just reaching out, looking for outreach, more ideas. You guys gave us some last week or last month, and we're reaching out. We haven't had really any traction yet, but this was Friday. I pulled out of a house that's using lake water, and it doesn't work if they're not clear. So I really think it's a problem. People use UV because if you're using surface water, you're exposing yourself to bacteria. And UV systems are shockingly poorly maintained. That's all I have.
There's the man in those attractive trousers right next to you that can publicize that.
Well, hopefully we can talk, and I have my display there in the back if anyone wants to ask any questions.
That's a good display. Everybody should take a look at it that hasn't seen it. It's scary.
Thank you.
Yeah, make you stop drinking.
I think you mentioned the last time, I'm not sure if the LGA was in attendance, but they do a lot of outreach.
Yep.
I don't know if this is in your wheelhouse or not, but this is very interesting. I maintain a system. I said you after the meeting the last time.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what you're talking about. This is a good, important message for you.
It's a subject we shouldn't forget about, so we appreciate your dedication to the
Yep.
project.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes. Step right up, Mr. Novitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Chris Nowitzki, Lake George Waterkeeper. Kirsten, I just want to say I'm excited about the study. I wish you luck. And I'm glad to hear about the outreach to the marinas. Excuse me, sorry. I think they can provide a lot of information, so I think that'll be a good part of the study. I did have a question. Kathy, you had mentioned something on the DEC docks, and I'm just wondering if those require variances or if the state is exempt, because I believe it's going out to 90 feet.
Well,
And I'm just wondering
Dave and Joe
that process.
probably can answer that better.
Is that a Joe question?
No, the dock regulations state that the state and municipalities are exempt from the permit requirements for docks.
Because the Waterkeeper boat is docked just 2 piers south of that. Gets very congested in there. We've got the Lake George Kayak Company. I'm not opposed, but we've got a lot of very, very amateur kayakers, paddle boarders. That area gets really, you've got the Morgan, you've got the Park Commission, all the state boats that have to be there and do great work. Gets a little concerning around there. I just, hopefully that was considered when that, and how far out is that getting pushed out?
I don't remember the dimensions.
It's 90 feet.
What's the existing, Joe?
It's about 40 now?
It's about
50, okay.
It's not going to be any further than where the Morgan is because the land comes out.
Yeah, it gets pushed in a bit, so.
It'll be right straight out.
I just wanted to find out if they were exempt. Thank you.
Thank you for your concerns on that. It's a subject that none of us wants to run over somebody.
It gets nerve-wracking sometimes trying to pull in there, so, thank you.
Anybody else? Nobody? Not hearing that, I will entertain.
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hearing none, we're adjourned.
Sounds very disappointing.
Till next month. Thank you, everybody.